Hello, everyone. My name is Matt Phelan. I'm co-founder of the Happiness Index, and today I am hosting the Happiness Index podcast, and I'm here with Kay Gunn. How are you doing, Kay?
Yeah, I'm really well, thanks, Matt. How are you?
I'm really looking forward to chatting to you today because obviously I interview people on this podcast all the time, but not someone that I've worked with for as long as I've worked with you, Kay. So
Yeah,
really looking forward to
yeah,
actually just getting a chance to sit back and learn from you, which I always do. For those that don't know Kay was when we started the Happiness Index 10, 12 years ago. Kay was one of the first people who backed us, actually became a customer. It's been a customer more than once.
yeah,
And I think anyone who started a business out there at the beginning, you might have all the science, all the data, all the investment, all the
yeah,
technology, but it does take one human to take a chance on another human being. So
yeah,
that's how I know Kay. She
yeah,
brought us
yeah,
into sports. We now work with all the UK sports within UK sport.
yeah.
We work with every type of sport you could ever imagine. That wouldn't have happened without Kay bringing us into that world at the beginning. Kay, that's how I know you, but please introduce yourself to our listeners.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Matt. Yeah, as you say, I've sort of come from the world of sport in professional cricket, and just under 3 years ago, I took the plunge to fully go out on my own, having done a little bit of consultancy on the side. So my specialism is I run a leadership and development consultancy where I specialise in development for first-time people managers, the accidental managers who get promoted. They're technically great at their job. Here you go. Here's a reward. Here's a team of 5, 10 people. And now what? So I'm the person that comes in before you get to the now what, and what then unravels, which I know we'll probably talk more about during the podcast. But I bring what I think I bring to the party is when we first met, I was a people director in sport. But prior to that HR world, I've also managed large teams of sort of frontline customer service people in non-HR roles across aviation, travel, e-commerce. So I bring quite a mixed bag of experience to the party.
And Kay, I just want to just chip in with my example there. When I started my first business, I was 25 years old, so I became an accidental manager.
Yeah,
Nobody appointed me. I was self-appointed because there was
yeah,
nobody else. I remember some of our first mistakes we made were to promote the most technically proficient people into the leadership
yeah,
role.
yeah,
And it just didn't work on so many levels. I think I've got permission to share this. Luke Knight was one of our team
mm,
members. Now he's gone on of all this crazy stuff that happened. He's now gone on to run his own business called Prospect
yeah,
Knight,
yeah,
a digital marketing company. But Luke and I talked about Luke was like one of the early forerunners of social
yeah,
media. Social media was booming, and we were providing that services
yeah,
to people. I think it's like 2010, probably when Luke joined him, and he was brilliant and grew that first bit. But
mm,
then we started to recruit. I remember him saying to me, "Don't really enjoy my job anymore." And I was
yes,
like, "Why is that?" And he said, "Well, I'm not doing the work anymore.
yeah,
I'm managing loads of people that I don't really enjoy. I don't really enjoy doing that, and I'm not doing any of
yeah,
the work." And
yes,
it financially, it was impacting us because Luke was wanting to leave, customers weren't happy,
yeah,
team weren't happy. It
yes,
and
yeah,
now like Luke's gone on and he's running his
yeah.
own business. But I think even in that, he now recognizes that he still doesn't manage teams in the way that you think of a manager. So I'm guessing this scenario isn't unique to me. I
No,
think others have been there. Mm.
definitely.
Why does it happen? Like, is it
If
what we're taught in schools? I don't know. This to me was the obvious thing,
Yeah,
but I made the obvious mistake.
I think what you've described there is a perfect illustration of what I see quite often. And I think it strikes me that organisations are quite traditional still in their approach. So I think there is almost that unspoken rule that if you're technically good, as you've described, the next obvious stage in your career is a team, a new title, potentially a pay rise. That's not necessarily a given. Sometimes you're sold well, you're now a manager. That looks good on your CV. And I think I'm speaking to people who now, I think as it gets more and more complex managing people, and it is complex from all sorts of points of view, but not least the legislative side as well. I'm hearing people just say, I really don't want to be a people manager. I just don't, just for all the reasons you've described. I like my job, but I believe businesses need to look at this a bit differently and look beyond the technically good people and think, actually, is there someone on the team who's maybe a little less obvious, who would make a good people manager, but isn't necessarily your star technical person? Because the cost, as you've described, is massive. Disengaged teams who often leave, the manager leaves because they're fed up, and productivity, client dissatisfaction. It's a massive issue. So I think businesses just running too quickly and don't give enough thought to what they're doing there. It's just like, it's the automatic, we've always done it like this.
Yeah. Kay, before we get into this, I do want to get into detail, but I
Yeah.
want our listeners to know what makes you happy, Kay.
I'm going to say it's probably a bit cliche, and it's interesting reading the latest happiness index global report. It's autonomy for me. And I think I've spent, and I've thought about this, it's different from the freedom aspect, because it's definitely not you do what you want when you want. And in fact, the opposite's true. I've had quite a rude awakening in the last couple of years of just how many hats you have to wear when you're fully running your own business. But I think I spent decades doing, I believe, a good job in different organisations, but I was always beholden to other people's agendas, really. So I
Yeah.
definitely am enjoying the autonomy. Sometimes I question how much autonomy I really have in things. Is it an open book of saying no to things? And yes, no, it's not necessarily, but it's actually, as the last couple of years have gone by, I'm almost just breathing a bit of a sigh of relief of, yeah, this is just me, actually. This is all on me. What I do, what I don't do in a day, what I'm investing in my future is all on me. And I really like that. And I like the fact I finally took the plunge, which I'd thought about for a ridiculous amount of time before I actually thought I've got to do this.
Good on you, Kay. I think just on that, as someone who's run a couple of businesses that I've
Yeah.
founded, I honestly truly believe that the only difference between someone who starts a company and doesn't start
Mhm.
a company is they start the company, which you're looking at me like, oh my God, what's that?
Yeah, I was about to say, go on.
But I think it is the process of making the decision is a defining splitting factor.
Yeah.
I think everyone actually has a blend of skills that could be incredibly useful to run your business if you surround yourself with the right types of people that are the other bits of skills that you don't have.
Yeah.
But I think it's like the decision is a test in itself to
Mhm.
do with like levels of comfort around a stable salary versus
Yeah.
not knowing what the future looks like. So that's why I
Yeah.
was went
Yeah.
down.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think sometimes entrepreneurship's like put on this pedestal, or in reverse case, it seemed like in the past before we had like famous people to talk about it, it was
Yeah.
seen like a Del Boy like type thing, like things that rogues would go and do, and it's better to go and get like a stable career. Now it's
Yeah.
seen as more like aspirational, but
Yeah.
I honestly just see it as one simple test, and it's whether you make that decision or not. And we know the numbers, don't we? Like only 10% of businesses have succeeded in the first 3 years, so it's
Yeah.
high churn rate. But I think any skill set, anyone who's listening that's thinking, oh, I couldn't do that, I always challenge them on that, because the areas that you don't have, you can partner, you can find
Yeah.
co-founders, you can bring in
Yeah.
employees. It is only about that decision.
Yes.
If you
Yeah.
make that decision, that's part
Yeah.
of the process in my mind. I don't
Yes.
know if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. No, it does totally. Yeah. That now you've explained it, it does make sense. I don't think there's that other bit where there is a vulnerability to going out on your own. And I am in my own. I know some people go in. I think you start up the happiness index with university friends,
Yeah,
but that vulnerability, I think that's also a big part of that. Not only the risk of where's your next sort of income coming, and got, the first month that salary didn't hit my bank account, I thought, wow, this is quite real now.
yeah,
But it is, you are constantly putting yourself out there. And I remember almost the first LinkedIn post, crikey, I haven't got much reaction to that. Oh no, like devastating. No, someone hasn't responded to my email. And I've definitely learned to be a bit more relaxed about things like that,
yeah.
because that's just par for the course.
Yeah, I've also noticed that people start their own business. I'm not saying you were ever this person,
Yeah.
but they never ghost anyone ever again, because when people are
Yes.
in house, sometimes they don't get back to people
Yeah.
because they're busy, lots of good reasons or whatever. But
Yeah.
when someone's gone that other side and they felt what it's like when someone doesn't just say, "Oh, we're not interested in your services,"
Yes.
like they never do that again, because
No.
you realize like all that other person needs is for you to say no thanks, and then you can
Yes.
get on with your life. Whereas to the other person, they're thinking, oh, they don't want to let them down. Whereas when
Yes.
someone's on the other side, you realize that, because ghosting happens so much when someone
Oh, it
starts their
does.
own business.
Yeah.
People that you thought you could rely on suddenly don't get back to you, and all this stuff.
Yeah. No, it's that ghosting has been an absolute eye opener, real eye opener. But you're right. I think if someone just says, and now I've started to say, if it gets to that point, please let me know if this isn't something you think is of
Yeah,
interest. But as long as there's, people keep the advice. I've had lots of advice over the last couple of years. And the bit is, as long as the door's still open, the door's still open. So
yeah,
unless actually someone says, no,
yeah,
no thanks, bye, you're still hanging on. You're bouncing it from to-do
yeah,
list to to-do list, or
yeah,
must remember to kind of contact
yeah.
them. So yeah, you're right.
So
Okay.
I would say to people, that aren't in that, right? A no helps the person. It's really
Yes.
good.
Yeah.
Saying no to someone is really useful because they take you off the list, their follow-ups, whatever, and it helps them
Yeah.
focus their energy. So if you're worried about saying no to people, actually reverse it in your head and think
Yes.
it's really. Kate, before I get into the questions, I do just want to touch a little bit on obviously your background in cricket, just really quickly, because England cricket team, they're having a change of captain at the
Yeah.
moment. And I just love your thoughts on captaincy and first time leaders, because I noticed, so for those that don't know, Ben Stokes has been involved in an incident where he is, for a period of time, not going to be captain moving forward.
Yeah.
And the assumption was that the vice captain would fill that role.
Yeah.
What England have done is they've gone back to the old captain rather
Yeah.
than go to the vice captain. And the vice
Yeah.
captain also had incidents to do with nightclubs in recent history as well.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, I find that interesting actually, because there's a cultural thing I don't know if you've got any thoughts on. But secondly, in the context of this, England cricket have decided not to go to the first time manager and chuck that captain in there. They've
Yeah.
actually gone to an experienced manager to keep the boat steady for a bit.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on any of that, Kay? Anything you'd like to add to that
Um,
conversation that's
uh,
not already out there?
yeah, I mean, I've no idea in terms of the insight into the England setup, no idea. But I think the experience within the county cricket setup, sometimes the process for appointing the captain was maybe not as robust as it could have been. And I think certainly one of the things that was always discussed was the need for a good sort of experienced role model, certainly when you have younger players, somebody that they can turn to in the dressing room and has the experience of what it's like to be under pressure, because it is a weird old sport. It's a team sport, but it's really individual. And I remember working with colleagues who had been ex-professional players and saying they used to, if they were having a bad batting run, they would pray for rain just so they didn't have to go out there again, just knowing it just wasn't going very well. And I think it's a very individual team sport. It's a very weird thing. I think it's interesting because the normal assumption would be if something happens to your captain, if they're out through injury or otherwise, intuitively you think your vice captain would step
Mm,
in that at that point. But I don't know. I mean, just second guessing with an HR head on, maybe there's more to it all behind the scenes. I don't know in
yeah.
terms of the incident, what's happening, what you could be seen to do by way of kind of moving people in. But it is interesting because I think you're right, they're first time managers and there's no difference. And it's a funny thing with sport. A lot of the rules don't seem to apply as they would in normal, like the support side and the playing side of sport is quite different. And
Yeah.
I think some of what happens on the sporting side, and it's the classic when you see in football, suddenly a manager overnight gets sacked, they're dismissed, and you think in an employment sort of legal context, how have they managed to do that?
Yeah.
But they all have clauses where, it's like whatever millions of pounds payout if that happens. But actually the same employment law rules do actually apply right the way along. But
Yeah.
it is interesting how my observation, certainly when I first got to the cricket club, was there was this sort of weird separation between the playing and the support. And you just think you're all people with a job to do, and without the support doing what they do, the playing bit, whether that be sponsorship, sponsors, catering, whatever, doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Getting people into the ground to pay everyone's salary doesn't happen. So
Uh,
I look at it quite differently, that there's no greater or lesser role. It's just that obviously the players are really under scrutiny, win-loss. It's tough.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of what's actually happened there, I've really no idea.
Yeah, I think Kevin Wafane, who we've had on and speaking at our events, he's an ethics lawyer.
Yeah,
And if we call the sports people in business context the superstars, let's call them that in a business, he always gives the example of when he had to fire someone who was deemed like one of the best salespeople, and someone said,
yeah,
"That's a shame. We've lost a high performer."
yeah,
And Kevin's point is always like, "No." You've lost someone
yes,
who is completely against the culture. I think the person that had got
yeah,
racist issues, like, no, I think his example was, no, you've fired a racist. You've not
yeah,
fired, and the cost of that and putting up with that
yeah,
person, putting up with that behaviour is seen somewhere else. You just
yes,
can't necessarily immediately see it. So, Kate, on first time managers, right?
yeah.
You've worked across the employee experience in sport,
Mm.
outside sport. Why this particular area? Because you could have done anything. Why? What's
Like you, Matt, I was an accidental manager as well. So my first proper management role was actually working for a travel company. So I was based out in various parts of Europe, but I'd sort of worked through the ranks. So it started with sort of supervisor of 10 people and to then being an area manager where I had 100 odd people over 20 sites. And there was no formal development apart from some of the sort of technical around the job. And I think I drew on best and worst of what I'd seen, which I think now I look more and more into it. It's quite a common thing. And I look back now and I cringe at some of the things I did, just thinking, you kind of had to assert authority in a certain way and the zero sum game of like, not back down over something. And I look back and I think, oh God, that's just cringing. But then I didn't really know any better.
Yeah.
So I think I toyed with the first time people manager specialism for quite a while, but I really went full on in this specialism earlier on this year. And I think it's a really underinvested in area of leadership development. You hear a lot about exec coaching, at that sort of senior level. I think if you catch people early on in their management and their leadership career, you've got a fighting chance of having an influence to those people who down the road become your CEOs at the kind of most senior level. Obviously, there's lots of stages in between. You have a fighting chance of heading off some of the shocking stories you hear with people saying, I don't know why this person heads up the business. They haven't got a clue about managing people. And you think the odds are they went through their entire career missing any development along the way. I think I love the impact you have with first-time people managers. I think in my experience, people are really receptive to development. And there's sometimes there's a little bit of embarrassment if you've been, 5 years into a role and you're admitting, actually, I don't know what good looks like. I think I need to do better. I just don't know. I don't know what I don't know. And there's less of an embarrassment when people are new into the role because it's like, well, you wouldn't, you wouldn't put someone into being a train driver without training them or a pilot or whatever. It's almost like, I believe we need to look at leadership development like that. It's just what you do when you're promoting people.
It's so true, isn't it? Because I love that example of, say, a pilot. Like you couldn't fly a plane without a qualification, but
No.
you could lead 1,000 people
Yeah.
without a qualification, and the impact on those people is huge. And even from a health and safety perspective, does have serious physical and mental consequences if you get it wrong.
Yeah. And the cost and all those things, the physical, the mental, the productivity, the people leaving your business, your financial cost to the business, reputational, you get a word out that you're not somewhere people want to work.
Yeah.
And then the next thing, you're struggling to recruit people. You're definitely struggling to hang on to people. And the cost, I don't think businesses are doing enough, to our earlier conversation about looking at sort of culture and actual cost to a business, to look at what is the financial risk, reputational risk, client risk of getting this wrong. And it's huge. It's really big.
I think it's going to a bit of a happiness index plug, but that is our biggest growth area in our services at the moment, where we're connecting the people data with the financial data. And the example I was using earlier is like a factory we're working with where the cost of not putting the training in is hundreds of thousands of pounds a year. So you end up with these scenarios where if you haven't done the P&L and cultural connector, the cost of the training is probably like 50 grand. So the financial director is looking at going, well, this is 50 grand we don't have to spend. But if the monetary cost in the business we've calculated at about, I think, something like 900, 950. So once you connect those two data sources, it goes from spending 50 grand to saving 900.
Totally. That's more palatable.
But if you haven't connected the data, and because we're in more financially strict and more commercially tough times at the moment, it's becoming more important. But that's a side note.
Yeah, totally.
Kay, what is the data actually telling us about how widespread accidental managers are? Me and you've both experienced it, 100% of people on this call, but there's two of us. Is this just our anecdotes, or is there more data on this out there?
Yeah, there's a lot of data. I mean, one of the sort of big stats is the Chartered Management Institute. Back in, I think it was 2023, 82% of managers were entering management roles as effectively the accidental managers. Exactly what we've described, technically good people who then go on to have zero development to equip them in the role. So that's a pretty startling statistic. And when I talk about first-time people managers, it's amazing. It resonates with everyone. Either they were one like you and I, or they've been sort of at the hands of being managed by an accidental manager. It's even anecdotally, people are like, "Oh, that's such a good area. That's so I wish I'd had that, or I wish my manager had had that." So I think you touched on the mental health stat and I need to read it because it's an absolute shocker, which is that 60% of employees worldwide say their job is the biggest factor influencing their mental health.
Mm.
And then managers have just as much impact on people's mental health as their spouse. 69% versus the impact a doctor has, which is 51%, or a therapist, 41%. So that's just startling. And actually, 64% of people admit they would prioritise mental health over a high paid job.
Wow. Yeah.
So you've
It's
got that.
unbelievable, isn't it?
It's unbelievable. And when you look at, obviously, the legal obligations of employers to look after people's mental and physical health, that's huge. And then you get into the whole, if you don't know what you're doing, you stray into the bullying, the discrimination, ultimately people leave managers, they don't leave organisations. And in my experience, people rarely tell you the true reason they're leaving. They're out of there. They don't even want to go there, because if they'd wanted to tell you, they would have probably done that before they just left.
Yeah. That's why the exit surveys that are built into the happiness index are anonymous.
Yes.
For
Yeah.
that very reason, because people at that point, it's like they've checked out and they know
Yeah.
that what could come back to bite them is not. They basically go, "Oh, it's not worth it." Whereas if
No.
it's anonymous and it can't be tracked back, you've got a chance of collecting some good data. But
Yeah.
other than that, I even do it with bad customer service sometimes. I'm like, do you know what?
Yeah.
I'm not going to complain. I'm just not going to come back.
No.
I don't
No.
even have the emotional energy. My meal's already been ruined. I don't have the emotional energy to have an
Yeah.
argument with this person, and you just don't come back. And,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that happens in the employee experience as well, doesn't it?
And I think there's the other bits of when people leave, the cost of replacing. I think there was a stat, and that's, I would say, the lower end a few years ago, of sort of the starting point of £19,000 to replace, a basic kind of entry level manager role. So the cost is higher than that in terms of lost experience, getting people up to speed, and also, exactly as you said, though, the hidden cost of the fact you then struggle to recruit people because you get the reputation, it's on Glassdoor, don't work for their nightmare organisation, they don't deal with things, your analogy earlier about the high performing and actually managing them, it's a classic, and I've seen it in professional sport where someone's high performing and suddenly their performance starts to dip off, and all of a sudden the issues that have been going on for years and years become an absolute priority, or we must tackle this, and you're thinking, crikey, how long has this been going on for? But it's only because finally something's been done about it, because they're not necessarily the star performer any longer.
Yeah.
And the ripple effect of that to the business, saying, well, if they're getting away with it, what am I doing here? I mean, it's terrible.
Yeah, I used all our data just to build a tiny high performance program just for a few senior leaders
Yeah.
just to work privately with. Nothing to do, it's not a product that Happiness Index offers, but I just wanted to test out and do some things. And on your point about first time managers wanting to learn, I learned something that really blew my mind, because I opened it up to a small group of people, and the only people that signed up for it were extremely high performers. And what I read into that, because I thought what would happen is people that are struggling with performance would see something to do with high performance and sign up for it.
Yeah.
What I look okay is that part of high performers is they're always looking for ways to improve. And
Yeah.
that's how they become a high performer, because they are open to new knowledge, ideas, insight,
Yeah.
data. So it was really weird. I started these first sessions thinking and saying to these people, I actually don't think I can help you because you're already at the
Yeah.
highest
Yeah.
level. Like, what can I do?
Yeah.
And so we ended up working on some very niche areas that they needed help on. But I totally locked that in. And then when you said that point around, it's people have got to be willing, haven't they? They've got to be
Yes.
open. They've got to
Yeah.
be
Yeah. Yeah.
open.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's not going to. Have you had any experience?
Yeah. I think.
Willingness is a subject that happiness in us is really looking into
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. And it's that whole thing of, because I do a mix of my programs and they're quite bespoke, but at the moment I'm working with organisations of a mix, so face-to-face workshops and some one-on-one coaching. But I also use a tool that's been developed from the world of elite sport that looks at mindset and behaviour preferences. And the whole premise of it is about adaptability, and the link to high-performing teams are the most adaptable teams. And I wonder if what you said there, though, is also linked, because I think high performers, that link between the emotion intelligence of self self-awareness and curiosity about learning. And there are some people, you're right, if someone comes into a room, and I have had this where I've actually had to go back to the person and the sponsor, if you like, and say, this isn't working, because the person's turning up, they're not doing what we've agreed. We've signed the learning agreement about, there'll be some tasks to do in between sessions, but they're literally not doing them. They're not taking it seriously. It's a waste of money and not good for me, because
Yeah.
reputationally, you're not going to see any shift in behaviour and performance because the person hasn't engaged with the process. So I think you have to call time sometimes. There is a thing is almost like uncoachable people, because otherwise it's just it just becomes a really unpleasant, painful process, and no one's gaining from it. I think you have to know when it's time, and I think experience tells me I do know. Sometimes you can unpick there's something going on where I've had it where people are saying, this is confidential, isn't it? What
Yeah.
we're discussing, because there is that psychological lack of psychological safety, that they're worried that there's a report going back to the sponsor or the boss,
Yeah.
or that's a whole other issue to your point, or the culture, if someone's feeling like that. And I think sometimes it puts people at ease to know, no, I might go back with an overview before, like how it's going, but we'll never be breaching any confidentiality about our sessions.
Yeah.
And that sometimes can be what's going on. So
I suppose also, if you look at our model, psychological safety sits in there. So if your
yeah,
company's sending you on a course, that's going to have to exist. Otherwise, you're going to think it's some kind of threat rather than an opportunity. My book's been picked up by one of the teams at the Football World Cup. Someone sent me a screenshot of it being used in a meeting, and what they shared back with me is that one of the coaches this is vulnerability,
yeah,
who's supposed to look at formations and patterns in their team. I don't know what
yeah,
that role is, but that was
yeah,
what was fed back.
yeah.
And they said in the meeting they can't see it. They've lost the ability to see. They're basically analysing matches of the opponents, and they can't see what they're supposed to see.
Interesting.
Obviously, that's a psychologically enough safe environment for that person to say that, because that's their role. And then they
Yeah,
went on to say, but out of that, then claim something that has allowed them to fix that. I don't know the technical bit behind
that's
it.
interesting.
But what I found fascinating is the person whose role it is has obviously got enough psychological safety in that team to say,
Mm,
the thing that I'm supposed to do, I can't actually do right now, which is
yeah,
better
that's
than lying
amazing.
about it, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah, totally.
Because if you do, like I think this is what people suspect about Harry Kane in the last tournament, that he really was kind of injured, but continued to play because he really wanted to be there. Whereas
Yeah,
in hindsight, it would have been better if he'd said, you know what, I can't. And I think that psychological safety element, I think
yeah,
is huge. A
yeah,
huge. Okay,
definitely.
I've just checked time. We've got 7 minutes and two big questions
Yeah,
to get through, so I'm going to pick up the
okay.
pace. What if the problem is more? So we've talked about like supporting managers, haven't we?
Yeah,
Let's put them
yeah,
in some training. But what if we're promoting the wrong people? I honestly, I'll put myself
yeah,
in the bracket.
yeah.
I don't think I'll ever be a really good people manager of lots of people.
No.
There's lots of elements to it that are not me. There's lots of elements that I
Mm,
enjoy, but
mm,
I'm more someone that can work with someone, maybe mentor someone. But to actually be a technical line manager,
yeah.
that's not my bag. Even I think here,
Mm,
Tony and I sort of share the CEO role, and he does the MD role. So the description of Tony is he runs a team that runs a team. That's how
okay.
we describe
Yeah,
Tony's role.
yeah.
But that's not me. I couldn't
No.
do that, but Tony does that to a level that I can't. So I would say Tony is the right person.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I wouldn't be. Are we? There must be other people like me. They're actually the
Yeah,
wrong person. Like,
yeah.
and how do we spot them?
Yeah, yeah.
I know.
Well, I think the fact that you've got the self-awareness to recognise that is a massive positive. But I think it gets back to our earlier conversation. I think organisations need to be providing alternatives. It's a bit like the sort of almost the argument of just people sometimes blindly going down the university route because they're not really sure what an alternative route looks like. There's not, it's that same thing of if I'm here and the correlation between if I need to show a business I look ambitious, that normally means I have to be willing to manage a team. And I think we need to get away from that to say, actually, your responsibility within an organisation can grow without the need for you to actually manage a team. So I think and organisations need to look differently, because I think it's painful if you're in a management position and you don't enjoy doing it. Everyone suffers. No, there is literally no positive. So there's an element where you can push yourself out of your comfort zone a bit. But if it really isn't you and you're getting so frustrated because you're not actually able to do the day job that you were very good at and you enjoyed. So I think it's looking at some different, surprising people in the team who might be good people managers who aren't your technical superstars. But I
Yeah.
think it's also removing this obsession with you have to be promoted to being a manager, to be ambitious and have the manager title. Otherwise, well, you're just not, I don't know what you're doing around here. Because some
Yeah.
people don't really have ambition to be moving onwards and upwards.
Yeah.
And I think that's fine too.
And you're right, you're right. My wife is in education. She's in
Yeah.
education because she wants to spend time and working with children.
Yeah.
However, in a school system, to get paid more money, you need to go up the ladder.
Yes.
However, the further you go up the ladder, right up to head teacher, the less time you spend with the children. So,
Yes. Yes. Yeah, of course. Which is just crazy because then you forget the reason you first went into
yeah,
education. And
yeah,
it's exactly that. So it's the sort of, you shouldn't be penalised. There should be opportunities for growth, whether that be financial stretch as a person, without automatically assuming that has to mean managing a team.
yeah. And the bit that I would add, Kay, to your point is I'm aware of it. Hopefully, I have a level of self awareness.
Mm.
However, it's been upped hugely by 360 feedback.
Yeah.
Everyone at the Happiness Index gets 360
Mm.
feedback from a mix of people.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know how you can run a business without every single person getting 360 feedback.
Yeah.
It's absolutely essential. And when I was reading stuff about my own like management,
Yeah.
I'm separating management and leadership because I
Yeah.
was getting really high scores on leadership,
Yeah.
but really low scores on management.
Mm.
And it hurt to read it, but it was so useful because it
Yes.
made me realize where my skills were, and now I can focus on them. So I would add, I think your core point is the one, which is making sure we understand like what we actually want from these people and not having these
Yeah.
like old work biases to
Yeah.
management means success. Because we've only got 3 minutes, I'm going
Mm.
to get you to talk about the next 3 years.
Yeah.
What what are your aspirations for first time people managers so they don't have to go through the stress that me and you went through?
Yeah.
And
I mean,
the cost, I suppose, Kate, the cost of the
the
business
cost.
is also
Yeah,
the
yeah,
other
yeah.
point.
I would like to see, for all the things we've talked about, the cost and looking at the cultural impacts, the cost impacts, I would like to see organisations to become the norm that even before you're looking at promoting whoever you're looking to promote, you start that support. You start, whether that's you, because there's other things as well. There's, having mentors alongside. But look at the formal development as the norm, not the exception. When you look at that CMI stat of 82% of accidental managers in the workplace running around the workplace with no development, that just can't continue because the cost to business across the UK is that has such a massive impact. And I think with just all the changes, it's complicated, hybrid, massive legislative changes that are coming. They've started to come in, biggest changes in decades. I just don't think you can have this accidental manager model continuing. I think the cost is just enormous. So I would love to see that this is just the normal. You promote and you have support that runs alongside. Because the human side, the human cost to teams and the individuals put in these awful situations where they're out of their comfort zones, can't ask for help, hate it, end up leaving, it just doesn't have to be like that. So I find it frustrating, but I'm hopeful that we can change things. There is definitely a solution there. And I'd
Yes,
obviously like to be at the heart of that. Yeah.
which is what I was going to say, Kate. If someone's listening and they're thinking, "Oh God, I've been making all Matt's mistakes,"
Yeah.
uh, where can they reach out to you? What's the best place to get hold of you?
I've got my website, www.kaygunn.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I think what I'm finding as well, interestingly, is I'm getting people coming now, this slight sort of contradiction, even though I'm saying about first time managers, I am now working with people who've been managers for a while, but effectively are first time managers from the point of view of they've had no development. So
Yeah,
that's interesting. And that's really what I'd hoped might happen, that's starting to come through with some of the clients that are coming, just saying, we realise we haven't done any of the development. The people, so these are organisations coming saying, we need to be better. We recognise that.
yeah, I love that, Kate. One final quickfire question. As I've bored you in the past, I'm a girls' football coach. I
Yeah,
coach my daughter's team, 12
yeah,
years old, roughly. If you
yeah.
went back in time and had to give advice to 12-year-old Kay, what one bit of advice would you give her?
Self-belief and have the confidence to make the move when I knew instinctively it was right to make the move. And I'm talking about staying too long in jobs, staying too long, not backing myself early on enough and just going, well, I'll kind of see. And I think it's the just take those risks, take the risks when you know gut reaction wise, it's time to take the risk. And
Very.
I think I'm definitely doing more of that now. I'm pushing myself to go, come on, this is, you don't get, you don't get a rerun of this, I think. And, I've got twins, I've got a son and a daughter, and I'm very much an advocate of that for them in terms of just do it. Like, just take those chances. And they do, they're doing some amazing things. Yeah, that's definitely the advice I'd give myself.
Okay, as ever, I've learned loads. I think
Yeah.
the summary is you don't get a rerun of this.
Yeah. Yeah. Lovely. I've really enjoyed speaking with you, Matt.
Thanks, Kay.
Thanks. Bye.